Hi everyone, Miss Alyssa here. One way we are going to personalize this project and bring it to life is by adding color to these black and white photos. Back before there were color photos, a lot of times people would take black and white photos and then use different ways to colorize the photo to make the person look more realistic. Left is a photo by Dorothea Lange, a photographer in the 1930s. Somebody painted the photo so that it looked like a color version on the right-hand side. Lincoln lived well before color photography, so an artist colored this photo as well. You would have to imagine the colors of his clothing and the color of his skin and hair in order to make this look realistic. Some artists probably used models to help them get the shading and the colors just right. I have two photos here that I'll use as examples. You'll want to color them first with colored pencils before you cut them out, just to give you a little bit more paper to work with. Plus, you can also extend the colors out beyond the photo and then trim it to look nice and neat when you're finished. There's two types of colored pencils. This one has a wood and then the pigment in the middle, and then these ones are all pigment. So they're a little bit more fragile, but you can get a lot more color out of just the pencil without having to sharpen it again. When you're planning out your photo, think about a skin color that you'd like to use. You can highlight a lip color, think about a nice background color, and maybe you could even do a pattern back there. And if you do pencil color over the hair and the clothing, even though it's very dark, it should still show up. Here's one of my photos after I colored it. I use the sides of my paper to do some testing before I put them on the little girl. I like to add a little bit of pink to her cheeks to make her look a little bit more alive. I put some red over her lips, even though her lips were black, so that they kind of look a little bit more red. And I even put some blue on top of the black that was on her eye. On her hair, some of this yellow, I just chose blonde for her hair color, but you can choose whatever hair color you want, really. I made some lines that kind of went with the waves of her hair going on top of the black so that they kind of showed up on top of the black. Don't worry if you go outside the lines of the photo, because we can trim this later, and it's easier to color it if you don't have to worry too much about being in the lines. You can do patterns in the background. This looks like her mom. I could color her too if I wanted, but this only took me a couple minutes, and now it actually kind of looks like a color photo. With this little girl, I'm guessing that she has darker hair, but I may take some brown here and go over the black and just define some of her curls, do some scumbling lines like artists have learned in my class, just to bring out some definition. I could even put a little bit on her eyebrows here, and then just lightly when you do her skin color, you don't have to press super hard. I'm going to do a little bit more of a morenito skin color, a little bit more of a darker brown skin color. And then it's always a good idea to come back with a little bit of pink for the cheeks to show more life, and you kind of put that right around the cheekbone area. Okay, so hopefully this gives you guys some ideas of things to do for your Children of the Holocaust colored black and white photos. And if you're having trouble coming up with what colors to use, go ahead and just use your favorite colors or your hair color, or think of your favorite shirt and what that looks like. I'm going to give her little pink lines on her shirt here, and maybe even color pink on top of her black shirt. There's really no right and wrong answer to this, and not too many ways you can mess up. When you're done coloring, you're going to carefully cut out your photo right along the lines that were printed. Now some of you guys may have lighter lines, so you just have to look really carefully where they are. But even in my other photo, this one right here, there's some very light gray lines that I can see that I will cut along when I'm finished with my back. After all that work, make sure you put your name on the back of the photo too, in case it gets lost. Now you're going to add your photo to your background paper. We're going to use a black background paper. It's a black construction paper. We'll put our photo on that, and then we're going to add a speech bubble and a thought bubble to our child's description. So you'll be writing something about your child and putting their name on a paper below the photo, but above the photo, you're going to imagine what your child would be hoping for or dreaming about and write that in this cloud bubble. And then you'd be imagining what your child would say and write this in the speech bubble. After I read about my little girl Inga on the internet, I wrote some things about her on this sheet of paper. for what she would say. I love playing with my siblings in our big house and making costumes with the fabric Daddy brings home. My doll is my favorite toy, and we go to the synagogue often. And I just put a little Jewish star right there. Then I had to think, what would be your hopes and dreams someday? So I wrote, I hope someday to be a fashion designer and a mother. And I wrote that because it says she liked to play with dolls. I love to write poetry too, so maybe I'll become a poet. When I'm done with these two now, I can cut them out and put them on my black construction paper. The final step is going to be arranging your pieces onto your black construction paper. The bottom is going to be your description with the child's name, and then you're going to put the photo in the middle and glue that down, trying to eyeball it so that it's even. Right now it's not, so I'm going to lift it back up and reposition it before I press it down on my paper. Lastly, you're going to put your speech bubble up here, and then your thought bubble over here, and if you cut out the little circles, they kind of lead towards her head, and then you want to glue all that down. If you find yourself with a little extra time, you could decorate your speech bubble or your thought bubble or add a little color to the images that you We are going to create a gallery with all of our children of the Holocaust in the display panels outside the auditorium.